Hello, and welcome back to Let's Chat with Jen and Angie. I'm Angie.
And I'm Jen.
And together we are Heart and Home Legacy Group with Edina Realty. Today we are super excited to have Claire with us. Claire is with Edina Title. We use Claire and the team at Edina Title. They're amazing. We wouldn't even be able to function if we didn't have them as our title team. They're wonderful. So thank you, Claire, for being here. We're excited.
So you know how they say it takes a village. We've had lenders, we've had a couple different lenders here.
We've talked about different real estate, portions of real estate.
And now today we have title. We really could not do our job without Claire here. She has come through on so many times with our clients, and we are just lucky to have her as part of the team, and we can't wait to talk to you. So Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
So title is one of those things that people don't really think much of because it's usually a part that we process our files. We pass them over to Claire, Dana, and the team, and then they get to work. We want to learn what all of that is because it's so important. Let's start with buyers. We get an accepted purchase agreement, and Jen and I process the file, which we call it in our world where everybody that needs it, the signed agreement gets the signed agreement, and then they get it, and then what happens?
Yeah, so once we get your paperwork from you as to processing things and getting things on a roll, what we do is we get that Trans Express from you guys that's got all of the information, and that gets sent over to our production team. From there, what our production team does is they get our file opened and they get all of the information for the transaction, and then from there we order our search.
And a search, like in that world, that's weird. So a title search, what is a title search?
So a title search, what happens is we contact our abstracting department and they contact the county. And what the county does is they pull all of the recorded documents that have ever been filed against that specific parcel number and legal description. And they pull all of those documents because abstracting is now a lost art. Everything is filed at the court system electronically. So those hardcover abstracts that we used to have.
The days of those. And you remember that? Oh man. And they would be books and I would just like open them and just smell them because they just had that old book smell. But it was so cool to look through those because you'd like have an old house. It was like in 1800, the land. Yep. And then eventually there's a house on said land. So cool. So out goes abstract and in comes electronic.
Yep. So out goes abstract, in comes electronic, and then the search comes back. And from there we develop our title commitment. And that title commitment is all of the requirements that we need to clear title in order to make sure that the lender has first lien, and then it's instructions on how to make sure that everything.
What would happen? So we're talking buyer side. What would happen if my buyers decided to forgo all that and we didn't do that? What would be a reason that would not be okay? Why would we want to make sure that our buyers go through this process?
Yeah. So one of the big things is we offer an owner's policy, and what that does is it offers an insurance piece. For the day that they purchase the property backwards. So what it does is it ensures that they have complete ownership to that property. If we don't do that piece of it, there is a chance that somebody could come back and say, I've got ownership in your property. Yeah. They could come back and they could take it away from them or file a lien.
If you are a buyer that has financing, the lender is going to require it because they want to be the first lien holder, as you had mentioned. But if it is cash deal, we always tell our clients, you still need to do that. You need free and clear title, which is also part of a purchase agreement. On the purchase agreement, there is a portion on there that talks about what kind of deed are you getting. A warranty deed, a personal representative deed, but at the end of the day, all of them are free and clear title. So buyer, everything is cleared, and now we put all of everything in numbers together. You guys work then with the loan officers at a certain point.
So really, we are in communication with all parties in the transaction. It's very typical now for sellers to have a different title company than the buyers. So what we do is we coordinate with the seller's title company, make make sure that you wonderful agents are in the loop.
Let me just stop you really rudely for a hot second. I just need to say something to you. That the hiccups come up, and Claire and the team, like they handle it, and then they let us know, oh, just so you know, blah 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 happened. We took care of it.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of people you want in your circle. That's why we have a Claire. Like that's so I'm sorry I had to interrupt you with that, but I needed to make sure that everybody that is watching this understands how amazing that is. They're go-getters. They're just going to get it done. They're not going to just wait for somebody else to do it.
Right.
They do it.
Or call and say, what do you want us to do? And in turn, what happens is us agents tell you after the fact when everything is done and clear. We say to you, hey, by the way, here's what happened, and it's done, and we move on. It's the streamlined program that you don't have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we had to just give you your praises.
Yeah. We give you some kudos.
You will absolutely
always work
yes.
like that.
And if you're watching this and you are a for sale by owner and need some help with the title, or if you are a real estate agent. Okay. So now you're communicating with the agents and everybody.
Yes. So we communicate with agents, specifically you guys. Seller's title company will communicate with their agent, is typically how that piece is handled, to solve any issues, if there are any. At that point, we reach out to the lender, give them our contact information, send out our preliminary CD, our preliminary number. Really all it has on it is the owner's policy, dollar amount, any record. So at that point, we make those touches there and start that pre-balance. Once we get a little bit further into the transaction and we are fully balancing, the lender will send their CD back to us, and we'll communicate back and forth for that balancing. Buyers are balanced, title is clear, lien, coverage. At that point, once we balance, we'll reach out to you guys with that settlement statement, and the lender will reach out to the buyer with their bottom line for their cash to close, and just there's no wire fraud going on, and don't send out those funds unless you hear from us.
We just got done went through buyer's rep, and that's a big part on it.
No matter how much we don't want them to, they will always try to sneak them in there.
Now the buyers, all the numbers are on paper, and they're going to show up at the closing table. And so we sit down at the closing table, and what happens at the closing table?
So closing table, we will ask for some sort of identification, just to make sure that you are who you say you are. We like to know that nobody is committing any mortgage fraud, and so do those lenders. What we'll do is we'll ask for driver's licenses, and then we'll start going through our documents and our paperwork. We do have clients that come in and are first-time home buyers. You can kind of read the room. They're a little nervous, and you can tell that you need to take your time and really walk through and make sure that they're understanding that paperwork process. You get a couple where it's their third lake place, or their fourth house, and they're kind of like, okay, well, we can kind of speed it along a little bit.
Right. You can talk a little bit faster. We got this.
I find that a lot of my clients are really surprised at how the time. What would you say the average time is for a closing?
It used to be about an hour from getting documents to the table, getting the buyer signed, making copies. We typically time block an hour, depending on the size of the lender package.
Well, and another huge difference too is since COVID, buyers and sellers don't sign at the same time anymore. Before COVID, it was very common that at closing you had the sellers and the buyers. Sometimes they would be in separate rooms, but most of the time we were all together at the table, which was kind of cool to like get to see each other. And then COVID hit, and sellers now pre-sign. So they pre-sign like a week in advance or so, and then the buyers sign. So yes, now you don't have even that visiting time of getting to know the person you're buying in the house. It's just very different now than it used to be.
There's no communication there at the end where both closers leave the table and
to go make your
copies, and they can talk about quirks about the garage door
or oh man, I remember blah blah blah, and like just having that connection with different stories about the house and things like that. It's very different.
It is.
And your agent will be present with you at your closing too. So you have your real estate agent, you have title there, so you're very
your lender
supported.
a lot of times.
So now let's switch over and talk sellers. So
Absolutely.
We've just gotten an accepted offer on one of our listings. What happens now?
So same process. So we get your guys' worksheet, get a file opened, and what we then at that point, because we're not ordering a search, we will reach out to the buyer's title. We do have two sets of documents, our documents as Edina Realty title, and then necessarily Clear title on their end. And then once we receive that title commitment, we do a look at it. If everything looks good, we'll email you guys and say, everything looks good, no issues. If there are any issues, we start getting on them here right away.
What would be an issue? What would be an example of an issue?
So example of an issue is sometimes we run into is a surprise mortgage. Sometimes when we're getting files coming in from other title companies, sometimes we'll notice that the satisfaction wasn't recorded from the prior closing.
And these would be things that sellers wouldn't know
You
necessarily.
would never know,
Yeah,
because we
so
don't ever know
that's why they
until
have
after
them.
the
Yeah,
fact that
right.
that things
Yes,
of your
yes.
team. So thank you.
And then what we do from there is we'll reach out to sellers. If you guys haven't already to purchase afterwards, we got to make sure that time is early enough to get funds to and from
Yes.
closing. And
We had, yes.
we had a fun
Or
one.
we had to make sure that things can get paid on time and at the exact right moment. Yes.
And
exactly.
so, and that's the thing, like that we love our clients so much and are such a great team that if one of our sellers has something they need to have paid, we make sure that we try to get everything timed, because you just never know sellers, different situations.
If there's a will, there's a way.
And there's always a way.
There's a way.
We'll always try to find it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Yes, we will.
We always try to find every possible option for clients, both buyers and sellers, and try to look for each scenario and each solution.
She has it. Well, this is really awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us
Yeah.
today. Title is one of the most important portions of the transaction and the least understood. So
Thank you.
all right. And we wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.
Bye.